Testing. Testing. All right. So what we're tackling today, we're going to pick up from that scrap typhoon that we were tackling. That pile that was originally stacked up to the bottom of my drawer cabinets is now gone. Most of it's been turned into these solid strips or solid boards glued up from several strips. They have to be ran through the jointer and planer. That'll be happening later, but currently Mother's Day is coming up, so I am making a bunch of cutting boards. A lot of them are from the panels from the doors. So if you guys remember when I did the panels for the doors, when I did the glue up, I actually added a spline in the glue up. So I actually ended up gluing a bunch of them together to make a thick stack. And then I cut out the spline sections in the middle. It left me with several stacks of strips. And then since these strips were thick enough, I can then rip this edge and then glue this side together because it's all edge grain. So then that allowed me to, again, essentially create a larger cutting board from all those really thin panels. And again, a lot of them were like 4 or 5 inch cutoffs, you know, so like I couldn't really do anything else with them. So again, by ripping them to 2 inches thick is what allowed me to end up making up. Well, once I ripped the 2 inch thick from all the little short cutoffs, and then I stacked them, glued them up. And then I was able to take several of these glued up blanks to again create this one. And once this one runs through the router sled, I'll be able to show you guys how good it's actually going to look. And whether or not these are trash or not, the only reason I had to cut out the spline sections because, again, there's gaps in there. You don't want holes in your cutting boards. I could fill them with epoxy or something like that. So I still do have these sections. I could cut them down to make smaller coasters or something. Haven't decided because, again, this is me trying to purge my scraps. But, again, as you do that, you typically make more scraps. So we're fighting my instincts. These may very well get burnt. Also, you guys may see in the very back, my scrap bin inside of my shop has been purged, all burnt inside the fire pit. So we have actually purged a good portion of my scraps. We still have all this ash right here and all these strips that we glued up. But these strips have a purpose. These cuts are going to be for Mother's Day. I have a couple cutting boards I'm trying to finish up. But then all these strips that I end up making boards out of, I have an idea for a TV stand. So I'm going to use these strips of ash probably as the doors is what I'm thinking. And then I have some mahogany, some other, you know, miscellaneous scraps. Not even scraps, they're just under 4 or 5 inches. They're not quite big boards. So I'm going to use this and some of my leftover ash to do a TV stand. But again, priorities for the day is to do my final glue ups for these cutting boards. And then we have this panel that is glued up from a bunch of 3/4 inch strips that I had laid in my shop. Typically too thin for any type of cutting board. I'm glad that, yes, my resources, my ability to reuse scraps is pretty infinite, I would say. This one though is glued up from a bunch of 3/4 inch strips that I had. 3/4 inches is typically too thin for a cutting board, so I'm going to end up cutting this one up and making an end grain cutting board. So, yeah, this one's going to end up getting glued up to some end grain cutting boards. Howdy. So yeah, you guys can see this one's pretty thin. So yeah, this is gonna be a whole bunch of end grain cutting board. Well, one large end grain cutting board once I cut it up. You're perfectly fine. Thank you for joining in. As a recap, since you probably missed it all, I have been on a bender of gluing up all of my various strips and scraps laying around the shop. These are all leftovers from the panels. So again, like the panels, there were, I think I kept one in here. I thought I kept one as an example. I didn't. But for example, like for this cutting board is all the end cuts from my stiles and rails. So like after I had my doors glued together, I was cutting off the stiles and I was getting like 2 and 3 inch blocks that had this profile and this dado ran in it that I had no use for. So I ripped off the dado and essentially made a bunch of square blocks that I then stacked together to glue up so then I can glue up to make this. I've been busy making some live cherry boards. That's beautiful. I just finished installing all the doors. And that same client actually wants a closet built up, and he wants all that done in a closet and then a security gun room type situation. He wants all that done in Cherry too. So I've actually never worked with Cherry. I've had a few Cherry boards come through the shop, but never really did a whole project in Cherry, I guess. So this is gonna be a fun one coming up. None live edge though. Well, unless he requested like the cabinet panels or something, but I don't see too much live edge in my future for this next project. But I will be using some Cherry coming up. And so yeah, that was one set of cutting boards. Essentially, all these blocks were just leftover styling rails when I track sawed off the top of the door. So again, ripping off the profile, the dado, left me with a bunch of square blocks. Those square blocks then became this cutting board. Man, that goes when I was installing these doors, I had a lot of fun. See, I imagine it smells great. Like cedar is probably my favorite smelling wood. But when I was installing these doors, I broke off screws into the door. I also broke a router bit, trying to route out all the mortises. Definitely want to remove all the waste with a drill bit first. Had a lot of fun. Yes, I will have to sand all these. Everything here will have to be sanded. That's another brings us to another thing. My Festool MIDI stopped working the other day. My dust extractor. I got to figure that out. I have to call Festool and see if it's still under warranty. I'll be figuring that out. Definitely, always. Again, if you have scraps, turn it into a project. And yeah, that leads me to this section of boards, which is just a bunch of thin strips from the panels. Again, after like doing all my milling, some of the panels, where they were like 36 inches, I needed maybe like 32. So I have like a little 4-inch piece. I took that piece, ripped it to 2 inches, and then stacked them all to glue up these, I guess, longer strips. But if you guys remember, I did splines on all of my panels, and I didn't want to have holes in any of my cutting boards. So I ripped out all the center sections that had the splines in them, which gave me several strips. And then I'm currently laminating all the strips together to make, again, a larger board. And then I'm going to cut it down, and then I'm going to have some more scraps, which I might incorporate to all of these once I have the holes and do something with. Can't really think of what else I can do with it. And yeah, again, I like to try to reuse scraps as much as possible. Again, I have an issue with just burning it unless it's like practically unusable like these. I can burn this. This is fine. I'm going to put it out to the side. Trust me, it's going in the burn pile. So what we have to do first is I need to run this one through the crosscut sled, cut off the ends and make her square. Well, probably don't even need to do that. This one really just needs to be flattened, and then I can go through the final trimming of it. I was debating, and I'm not sure if I want to wrap this with like walnut or something like that. I haven't made that decision yet. I don't think I am. I think I'm just going to leave this one like it is, and then do juice screws and handholds. Yeah, that's what I'm doing with both of these. These are both of just going to be straight ash. That's what I'm thinking, instead of adding anything into them. The other one with all the various pieces of wood, this ingrain, I think, again, this is going to be the more decorative one. So this is like a 40-inch piece that I can keep. And then once I plane it all down, I should be able to get at least like 3/4-inch strips that I can then glue up for an end grain. So first up, I actually dug into the crosscut sled. I need to rip both of these edges clean so I can get this glue up here. And then I'm set this aside. I'm going to head to the planer, plane down that other board, set it up on the crosscut sled and batch out all of my pieces, do that glue up, and by then this should be dry. And we'll probably set up the router sled and flatten all the cutting boards is the goal for the day. If I can get them all flattened, I'll be pretty happy. Then I can go into juice screws and handles, sanding, and applying the finish. And I don't even think it's clogged. Yeah, not the festival. I don't know what happened. Yeah, there's so much glue on my bench. So that's a secondary thing I started doing. I love scraping glue off the bench. So where is it? I started this piece right here. It's actually so much like it can't. It's coming up in a big piece. So I kind of just been working at it, trying to keep it. So yeah, there's a ton of wood glue all over the bench. So yeah, I've been going through that process. Definitely do need to clean it up before I can even use the router sled. So, but I have one more glue up to do. I'm gonna get that one out the way, and then I'm gonna go through, give the bench a scrape, so I can utilize the router sled. I do have that roll of craft paper that's right there behind the table, so I probably should start using that more so I don't have to scrape. And it will save my bench dog holes. I do need to actually come back through with my router. I want to use a templating bit and come through and plunge and make sure all these are 190 degrees to the top and clean out any of the excess glue in there. So that's another project that is coming up that definitely needs to be done. So I've definitely gotten glue in a couple of these holes. I think that's enough right now. All right. That's enough. Yes, please don't use your chisels as hammers. And again, in my youth, I was not as responsible with my chisels, but after sharpening and spending hours actually hand sharpening the chisels, I used this is my dull chisel, so I'm using it for scraping glue. I typically use my 5-in-1, but like things inside of your shop, I've obviously lost it. So dull chisel for scraping up glue. But yeah, any of your nice chisels, if you're taking the time to sharpen them. Oh no, losing things inside of a shop is just part of having a shop. That's what it's here for. If you don't misplace your important items, is your shop really doing this job? Yes. I have a couple beater chisels that I did not take the time to sharpen. I do want to buy myself a nice set of chisels, though. That is like an actual nice set of chisels. And also like a Japanese hand plane. I would love to have one of those. All right, so I need to straighten up the edges on this so I can do another glue up. Lower the saw blade.
definitely still scares me too, but it's probably the most simple tool in my shop. I don't think I've built anything that doesn't come across the table saw at least once, at least haven't yet. I want to get a saw shop. I've been thinking about it more and more. I'm going to make that investment. You just say what's all wondering if I have enough power for what I really want to do with it. Hey, how you doing? I have a funny thing about the I remember my first time using the table saw. It's pretty bad. Don't recommend it for anyone. Yeah, it's one of the ones
Let's see what you guys are saying. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, my first table saw experience was actually pretty funny. I was on the job site and I've gotten pretty comfortable, like the miter saw and everything else. And again, I was working for general construction. So the table saw that they had on site was probably the biggest piece of junk I've ever seen. I might run these through one more time, or I might hit it on the jointer. Does it close up when you take it off of the table? Yeah, no, I can make that work. Okay, yeah. So we were using the table saw that you push the button, it didn't start. You have to actually take a stick and kind of give the blade just a little bit of a spin start before it actually cut on. And I thought that was normal. And then I later learned that no, that was just a really crappy table saw, and our boss didn't love us. That was it. That was the story. All right. I'm going to do this glue up. We're going to set this aside. And then we're going to run this board through the planer so I can then cut her up on the crosscut sled and then do its ingrain glue up. And then we're probably going to set up the router slits and start doing the actual flattening process. All right. And hopefully by the end of the day, I have the semblance of 3 flat cutting boards. This one I might add more to. We'll see. This really dark wood is just really, really dirty. It's actually purple. Reddish. So yeah, we'll figure out what this actually looks like as she runs through the planer. Because again, there's a lot of dirty wood in here. This is just a bunch of scraps and stuff. Again, later on the shop that were under 3/4 of an inch. That again can't really do end grain cutting boards, or just a standard, face grain cutting board with 3/4 of an inch. So once it gets planed down, we're gonna be end up cutting it into like 2-inch strips, just like these, and then flipping them on in to make an end grain pattern. We'll see what that looks like. Hopefully it looks pretty cool. And then we'll see which one of these my mom actually prefers. It'll probably be this one, but she's already expressed to me she doesn't want it to be heavy. So she might not want any of these. I might want one of my other smaller ones I made. We're gonna see. Well, let me grab a couple clamps. We can do this glue up. How wide is this? It's just over 12 inches, so none of those will work. I'm just going to use these because they're right here. I'm going to use my good old-fashioned finger, spreading the glue. Where did I put my glue bottle? Oh yeah, but whatever what that is, I imagine it's not a common one. I want to say it's rosewood, but I really don't know. That's like a really deep reddish purple color. I imagine it's not cheap. I imagine probably in the walnut range, if not higher. So like to make it like this ash that I built the doors out of was $550, $575 a board foot. Walnut, it's like 11 to 12. It's like I think I spent $3,000 in wood for those doors roughly. If I were to do those doors in solid walnut, it's about $6,000 in just materials. So that reddish rosewood or whatever is probably, because wood can get up to like $30, $40. Well, even higher than 30 or 40. Most expensive thing I've ever worked with, like in scale, would be walnut. Actually, no. Yeah, walnut. I actually don't know how much cherry is. I need to look that up before me and my client start discussing pricing. My interior designer is supposed to be getting with him this week to start coming up with a design so I can actually come up with the actual numbers. It'd be kind of hard for me to come up with prices for this closet without like at least some kind of semblance of, hey, this is what it's going to look like. I need a cabinet. And I can kind of come up with something. But again, I definitely want to defer to my interior designer for her design ideas and options because it's what she does. And unlike some really bad contractors, I'm going to get more than like a Pinterest picture. I'm actually going to get a design and a layout and dimensions, and makes my job easier than have to do all the figuring myself. But then, yeah, this is going to get router sledded, cut down to a final dimension, which I think I can get this one. Where's this now? Okay, how much is cherry a board foot? Or how much is cherry a board foot where you are? Because it might be different here, but I'm curious. Yeah, I never bought cherry, so I don't know. I feel like I want one more clamp on this. Actually move this one. There's a bigger gap in the middle. The gap has already disappeared. Let's put a stronger clamp right there, smack dab in the middle. Just in case there is any gaps, we'll close it on up. According to my chat, GBT is 15 and 25 for the wavy figure stuff. Okay. I think walnut here on average is between 11 and like 14. Unless you're getting like some really rare variant, like Bastogne walnut, like your, Black Forest. So yeah, probably about in that ballpark. Damn. All right, this might actually be a really fun project. I'm actually pretty excited. Again, never worked with it, and I love woods that smell nice. Like cedar, even though it's not the best wood to build with, it's currently my still favorite. Like I love walnut. Walnut's probably the best, but I've used mahogany. It's actually the best to build with because you can build anything out of it, and it's really stable. It's hard. It's dense. The machine's nice. It looks nice, but I think walnut looks nicer, but it's not good for exterior stuff. But like cedar all around is like my favorite thing to work with because of the smell. So cherry's gonna be really enjoyable. Like I love when the shop like smells like sawdust, but like I think the smell of cherry with a bunch of milling and planing is gonna smell so good in here. Yeah, I love cedar. Cedar again. I think I have maybe like 5 or 6 pieces of cedar left in my shop. And I do have a couple out there in my tent that I need to sort through. I have a bunch of wood actually in my other tent I need to sort too. I never actually threw cedar on my barbecue. I have some that I probably could use for that. Actually, I could throw those on the grill and set this onto the fire pit. Might be an option for the future. All right, the next step for us is to run this board through the planer to get to some type of uniform thickness so I can cut her up and then do my glue ups. So I need to make sure my planer is far enough away from everything. I have plenty of outfeed. Let me just set a relative height. Let me grab my hair protection and a cigarette, and we can start running this through the planer. Let's see, it's 28:58 right now. So in about an hour, or at about an hour, that can come out of clamps, so we should be good to do. I wasn't planning to actually mill up all those strips back there, but since I'm waiting for that glue to dry, I might mill this up through the planer and then set the joint and do all those strips back there too. Might as well, because again, I want to let that dry before I go to the router set and stuff. All right, planner's hooked up. Hair protection is still over there. Oh, see, I had an old coworker that did a lot of smoking. I'm not a grill master. I can, run your charcoal grill pretty good. That's about it, But like, I have an old coworker that did nothing, but he is a master. I used to love when he would bring me roast or anything that he cooks because he was really good on the grill. So, considering I'm a woodworker, I probably should dabble in that just a little bit, huh? I guess it would make sense. Is this bag close to full? Nope, it's only halfway. That's awesome. I shouldn't fill it up today.
All right. This is going to get chopped up to big. I just finished out at about 7/16. Not quite the 3/4 I wanted. This is about 40 inches though. I'm missing stuff. All right, boss man. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for joining in. All right, that's it. That's it for the planning for right now. But I think I still have like another 15, 20 minutes before I pull the other board out of clamps. So before I go back to the table, so I to cut this one up. I could just move the clamps down, cross cut this one, and then go straight into this glue up. I might do that actually. So let's clear off enough space. Let's try to get you guys back here somewhere. That should work. All right, that isn't that thick, so this doesn't need to be. That should work. All right, now that we have a square cut, what I want to do is decide on, because again, this came out a little thinner than I wanted it to. I have 38 3/4 before I get to this little beaded profile up here, which I theoretically could still use in there. It would just create a hole that I would have to fill, which even if you fill it with epoxy, and again, it'll be a really small hole. So even if I filled it with epoxy, it might not be too bad. I would think about it, but essentially I wanted to make these pieces at least 2.5 inches thick. So that way after I go through the router slate process, I end up with at least a 2-inch thick cutting board. So I go 2.5, 5. That's 4 pieces. No, that's 2 pieces. 2. That would only give me 12 pieces. This would be under a 12-inch cutting board. These are only 7/16. I'm gonna need more material. Looks like.
Looks like I'm gonna need more material or more end grain to add to this, which I gotta think about. Let me call these pieces and we'll see what we get. And I will probably end up going up some other stuff to make this one longer. Let me set up a stop block. I don't have my regular cross-cut slit stop block, but these will work. So that gives me a pretty cool pattern, but that is only 6.5 inches of a cutting board. I originally was hoping this material was going to end up about 3/4 when I finished. But that's going to be pretty cool. So I now need to find either more random strips or something else I can mix in there to expand the length of that cutting board. But it's gonna be a really thick boy, you know, 2.5 inches. And yeah, this is the beaded profile. This is from that cabinet I made. It's like that hole right there. I don't think I'm okay with leaving. So this strip is additional. And this strip is right where that beaded profile starts. So there'll be a hole on the other side, which is small. It could be filled with epoxy, just like this one could. Like if that was sitting right there, we'll probably nap against another bead. That's a really small hole in your cutting board. That could be filled with epoxy. But again, I think I'm just going to take these two strips out and figure out how to make something else cool to add to that. But right about now, this one's ready to come out of clamps. But what I need to do is actually figure out what I'm going to add to the end of that cutting board. Because this is the one I wanted to give to my mom. Like, these ones are cool and all. Again, reusing scraps. This one actually looks cool. You know. But again, with the board only ending up being about 3/8 after coming through the planer. Like these pieces also. Do I just burn these? I could theoretically rip these down to like 2 inches. Probably cut them in half. Glue them like a stack. And then probably eventually rip them down to like 3/4. But then they'll be too small to run through your planer. They'll be end grain. It would make some pretty cool coasters though, because I could rip this down and again stack them up to make coasters. So again, I'm purging scraps, but this looks pretty cool. So I don't want to throw this away. But again, this could be glued up, chopped up, and then keep stacking to make a coaster. But again, they're too thick, so you probably can resaw them as well. So let's just put this to the side, and we'll see what I do with this later. Or if this is still sitting in my shop, 3 months from now. Now, back to this issue. I'm trying to think, what else do I have? Because I could take just something simple like adding strips in between the pattern of like mahogany or something. And that'll keep the pattern going without trying to change it. Because I could also, again, glue up a whole nother panel of random strips, but they're not going to match this pattern. So I don't really want to change the pattern. What I'm thinking is I take strips of other boards that are thick enough, because that needs to be 2.5 inches. I don't have a short piece right now, but like a piece of this mahogany. Again, this is a really long board, but I'll cut this up. But I always take a strip of mahogany. Can't even lay it in here because it's too long. But the sandwich in between these to kind of, make it longer. So how many strips of mahogany? How wide is this mahogany strip? Do I want to use this one? Do I have anything else I can inlay in there? And then if I was to inlay 2 different types of wood, I want enough to make it a pattern. So, and also, again, those strips I lay on that bench, they're for a nightstand, not a nightstand, but a TV stand I plan to build. So these longer strips that are under 2 inches, I kind of had a plan for them, which was going to be for that project. So I don't want to cut this down too short. I do have several mahogany strips. I think I have some walnut down here. So I do have a couple pieces of what I believe is walnut. Let me back the camera off for you guys. Yeah, a couple pieces of what I believe to be walnut. I need to cut a piece to make sure. But like again, I can take these and rip 2.5-inch strips and then laminate those inside of the glue up, which again keeps this beautiful pattern. But again, adds one more accent, but also makes it thicker. Then also something else I want to show you guys. There's another option you can do whenever you have a pattern panel like this. You could flip them or flip every other one. And that typically gives you another pattern. Like, how does those line up regardless? That's actually confusing because again, the strips that I put in there were randomized. But typically, if you alternate the pattern, you can get your pattern kind of alternating back and forth. Let's see. Yes, and you can always resend them multiple times. How you doing? How you doing? And no problem, boss man. Glad that you're in here. Oh yeah, you can use your cutting boards for whatever you want, rolling trays or other nefarious activities. I am no judge. Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. Again, this ended up being a little shorter than I wanted it, but I do love how that looks. Camera's this way. So what I'm going to do to make this longer, I wish I could make it wider, but I can't without throwing off that pattern. But we're going to inlay again a couple pieces of walnut and a couple pieces of mahogany to stretch this out. And since we have a total of 5 3/4 of an inch, this board, I think, again, if I glue these up perfectly straight and I won't have to trim any of it off the edges, I'm hoping I don't, because I'm really good at that. It's 12 1/8. So hopefully, worst case scenario, I end up with 12 inches. Thank you. This whole entire project and everything we're currently doing is all inspired by scraps. These were leftover 3/4 inch strips that I had laying around my shop that I then glued up into a panel, ran through my planer. They ended up being about 7/16, and that I was hoping they were about an inch. I was hoping to yield about 3/4. I yielded about 7/16. So my cutting board that I made out of them ended up being short. But we're going to improvise, adapt, and overcome. We have other scraps around the shop that don't mind being sacrificed. This is the ugliest looking piece here, so probably this one will be sacrificed. Probably try to save those for something else. But some of that walnut, some of that mahogany, we're going to inlay some strips in there to make this wider without ruining the pattern. These are leftovers from the door panels. I did a lot of surgery, kind of gluing up and stitching everything together. But these are all the panels that were, 2 and 3 inch cutoffs. They were like a 10-inch wide panels, but they were like a 2-inch strip that was like 3/8 of an inch thick. No use for them, so I cut them down to 2 inches and stacked them together to glue up blanks, and then I end up gluing them together this way. And then these are all old cutoffs from the styles. So after I glued the doors together, when I cut the doors to length, I had a short, 2 or 3 inch section of a style. This is a test rail, but imagine if I only had like a 2 or 3 inch section from where the style ran long. What I did was end up ripping off the profiles, ripping off the dado, and getting square blocks that I glued up for that one. And then while going through the milling, I had a ton of strips because again, my joiner maxes out at 6 inches. I had some 8/4 by 8, etc. So throughout all that ripping, to get it to fit on my joiner, I ended up with a bunch of strips. So instead of tossing them, I ended up ripping them down to then glue up to make more boards. And my goal with all this scraps, these aren't scraps, they're just leftover hardwood that I have from another project. But again, under 3 or 4 inches. So my goal is to turn this into a really cool TV stand, floating TV stand. So I don't really want to pull too much mahogany or anything from that. But this, and now I have a bunch of ash too. My goal is to really use up this ash before I use up all that stuff. But ash, that stuff is an accent to make a really cool TV stand. Because this is all the scraps from the door build. My goal is, again, to try to purge it by making something cool out of it. And we're getting there. Just a lot of glue ups. I need like 3 more flat surfaces. My dad's working on this Range Rover up front, so he took over one of my benches. It's fine. But so yeah, flat surfaces are at a decline. I just semi-cleared that one off. It's not usable yet, but I can see it now. So I count that as a victory. So my next step though is to clean up some of these walnut boards. I need to figure out how many I need. How many do I actually need to run through the planer, etc. to get that squared away, to get this board to a proper size is what I need to do. And then I can set up the router sled. So with this being, I think this was 5 3/4. I want at least 15, 16 inches on this cutting board. So I need another 10. How many spaces are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 spaces. If I did 3/4, that's 12 inches minus. I'm doing math weird. Don't judge me. That would be 12 that would be 12 inches. That'd be 8 inches. So that would give me 14 and some change if I made these strips 3/4. So there's 12 spaces, 14. So it end up being even. What I can do is either all walnut strips down the middle and 2 mahogany to cap it at the very end, or because it's 12 spaces, 2 end caps, walnut, mahogany, walnut, mahogany, walnut, mahogany, but then the end caps would be different. So what I'm debating on is if I want all walnut spaces and then just mahogany at the very end, because that would mean I would need 12 pieces at least 12 inches, which this piece may need to be at least 2.5. So I can get 2, 3, 2, 4, 6. So I can get 6 pieces out of this walnut here with some scraps left over. These boards are sizable size, so to turn them into scraps almost hurts, but that might be what I do because this only gives me 6. This will give me 8 with some scraps left over. Let me see, because I will need 14. What other mahogany scraps do I have? Or if I have another chunk of walnut, I have to find a part of it. Yeah, this one isn't walnut. This one's whatever that redwood is. I really don't want to use that up. So decisions. With that, I can make 8 strips, which means I can do 2, 6 of them in mahogany. So if I had to cut this is 3 inches wide, so that would work. If I had to cut 36 inches off of this piece, how long would it be? That's 8 foot. This is with a 60-inch piece, which the nightstand, I want it to be 56. This will leave me with a 60, so I can cut 36 off of this and the other piece of mahogany over there and get enough pieces to make all my strips. So that's what we're going to do next. Is make the walnut and the mahogany strips to make that cutting board larger. Then we'll glue that up, and then we can head into the router sled situation. So miter saw first, and then we'll head to the jointer and planer to get those squared away. Actually, is this one 8 foot too, though? Yep. And this one has a nice curve in it, so it's really good to cut up. Thank you. All right, this is all the material I need to add. And how long is this? So I cut that longer than 36, and I cut that 39. This leaves me with 59 inches. And again, that TV stand can't be longer than 56. So that works. All right, jointer, then back to the planer. So instead of putting the planer over in the corner, I'm just going to pull out the jointer. Let's turn you guys around. Unplug the planer. Let me make sure none of these are over 6 inches. That one's over 6. That one's over 6. That one's over 6. So actually, before I do that, I need to rip a couple of these. Let me put this back. All right, now these will fit on my jointer. And I've created another problem. Checking out these. I can't use these. So obviously, responsible woodworker that I am, there's only one home for these. Only one. Fire bucket. I want everyone to go home today, or if you're not already home, you go back to your shop, grab that one piece you know you're never going to use, and throw it into your fire bucket. But only if you're absolutely sure. You don't want to be second guessing yourself and have to look through your fire bucket later. Not that I've ever been there. Jointer. Lock the wheels, grab the hose. All right, let me face joint everything first. Let's see. I ain't even. Yes, I had a concrete guy tell me a while back. They called the Invisalign steel toes. All right, so before I turn this noisy machine on, I'm going to have me a cigarette. We'll get these flat and square, run them through the planer, then we'll rip them down, and then we'll add all these strips into that one cutting board, and then by then we'll start router sliding everything. Time I get the other two flat, this one, well, the one we're working on now should be ready to come out of clamps. Router sled that one as well, juice grooves, handles, and a good portion of my scraps in my shop has been eliminated. So definitely enjoying taking this step and purging some of this stuff, but also again, instead of just burning it all, it's more satisfying to make something out of it. And as a maker, even if you don't sell anything, I think half the satisfaction for me really is the therapy. It's the therapy in actually making something. So even if you don't already have a client for something, if you're a woodworker, you like making stuff, if you sew, knit, or whatever else, just go make something. Make yourself feel better while making something for somebody else. Let's see. I want a brad nail there. I can still carry that. What was it? What do you mean it was small though? Like, you just mean like it was a pen nailer? Like it was like a 23 gauge, 21 gauge, 23 gauge? Or do you mean like even for a brad nailer, like an 18 gauge, it just looked small? Water. Gotta stay hydrated. The biggest one I can fire is 3/8. What gauge is it? Because I think, again, I don't have a 23 pinner, but like, I think a 23 can shoot at least 1-inch brads. Oh, it's an 18. An 18 that can only shoot 3/8. That's legendary. Where did that come from? And why was it made? I want to know what the purpose of it is for. 18 gauge, 3/8 max. My 18 gauge, I don't even think can shoot 3/8. I think my 18 gauge only goes down to 5/8 nails. So you have an 18 that shoots the in between mystery nails. So like it shoots 3/8 nails is the max. What is the minimum? Like, cause like what's the shortest nail they can shoot? Just out of curiosity. Like a 1/4 inch, or does it go even smaller? Quarter. That's hilarious. So yeah, it doesn't shoot different length nails. It just has a little bit of wiggle room for manufacturing error. If you order 1/4 inch nails and they're 3/8 inch long, they'll make it work. That's hilarious. Because I was like, what kind of range does that even have? That's your concealed carry. That is fucking hilarious. Okay, it's a stapler and okay. That makes a little bit more sense. Then that might be a specific nailer for like a fabric or something like that. See, staples they get really really short for laminating plywood and for furniture. So it's probably a furniture 18 gauge gun for some reason. But like I have 18 gauge stapler that shoots all the way down to small staples. Well, they go down to 5/8. So again, probably for furniture, if I had to guess, or like really thin veneers or thin laminates or something like that, is probably what that's for. It's probably meant for stitching furniture or something like that. You can even put really. Yeah, see, that's definitely a furniture gun then. See, I just never seen one, but that sounds like a furniture gun, like a gun that was meant for again putting on fabric and upholstery and stuff like that. That's pretty cool. Then yeah, you got lucky finding something like that. Because again, I don't do a lot of upholstery, but whenever I'm dealing with like Luan or something like that, it's nice to have a staple gun that's not going to blow through stuff. And the fact they can take T50s, you can use that for screens. You can use that for a lot of stuff. So great find, actually. I was laughing. Okay, now you're fucking with me. You get the jokes. You get the jokes. Even USB rechargeable. That's fucking hilarious. Wait, are you joking? Or are you serious? Oh, you were serious. Okay. See, I thought the jokes were. Oh, so it's a battery powered small 18 gauge staple Brad gun. Again, completely new for me. That title must have been a lot to read. But still, definitely a really useful gun to have. Um, my staple gun is actually on the fritz. I needed to go buy because again, I do general construction. So like my tools bounce between my shop and my truck. So I have one 18 gauge nailer and one 18 gauge stapler. I typically keep the stapler inside the shop because I use it more in the shop than I do on the site for cabinets and whatnot. But my 18 gauge stapler is starting to jam more often, which is really annoying. And yeah, so I need duplicates and actually, I like to have a stapler on the job site as well. So I need two staplers. Then let's see. Damn, it's so hard to see from over there. That would be a pillowcase over the windows. Yes, that's exactly what it's good for. And hanging pictures, man. You probably can hang like thumbtacks and stuff to the wall. It probably has a thumbtack setting or an attachment to throwing thumbtacks. All right. Let me get to jointing and planing these boards so we can continue on with these cutting boards. That's pretty cool though. I might have to look into it. Or look into one. Yeah, definitely wouldn't be bad to have face junkies. Oh, I never plugged it up.
tools need power, kids. Don't forget. I'm gonna show you guys at the East Pass. Well, let me show you the dirty side. Something you guys probably wouldn't want to be inside of your furniture. First pass on the jointer. You see how it's taken away right here around the edges. There's a cup in the board. It hasn't quite hit the metal yet. Another pass or two will probably be nice and flat. We're just about there. You still see a little bit of raw right here and some right here. So one more pass you're doing. But walnut looks so freaking good. I just love walnut. Beautiful. Yes, it is. It's the rigid 6 inch. That was scary. You just pull a big old chunk off the corner. So your hands don't want to be nice and low. Keep them up high. I actually probably should have been able to tell rain is running down and off this edge. So as the knives are coming up, I was able to grab it and tear it out. Oh yeah, definitely. I got some brand new blades on it, and she's been awesome. Brand new blades, fresh coat of paste wax, and tuning her up for good. Yeah, she runs great. So yeah, if you're looking for the best small budget joiner, I would recommend. I mean, unless you don't get like a bench top, like 12 inch, and like build extension wings for it, I would say this 6 inch because I have done 8 foot boards on this. If you have an in feed and out feed roller, you definitely can do 8 foot boards on this. It has the power for it. It just has a capacity limit of 6 1/8. So yeah, can't really get anything else that'll beat this price. So I highly recommend it. But this is also my very first floor standing jointer. So, if I had like a giant jet, I'd probably say that's the best that you can get. But for the price of it, how it performs, this being my first real full size jointer, can't beat it. I did have one benchtop jointer before this. All right, now back to the planer, and then we can delve into the glue up and our router sled. All right, what is the thickest piece here? I think it's this one.
Nope, it is 120. It's the Win Environmental. And yes, it's a decent dust collector, but what I actually have plans for, I actually have a canister filter to upgrade it because the bag filter kind of sucks. So I need to add that up there. And then I'm going to change out that bag for just a simple 5 gallon bucket. I'm going to be adding a separator right below the inlet. And then I'm going to be mounting it up here either on this wall or back there in that room and then run ducting in here for the rest of my tools. So I'm not bringing tools to it. Future plans though, but that's a bunch of ducting and upgrades that I'm not quite ready for financially. Now I actually need to take this one out of clamp so I can clear off my bench, and then I can run those through the table saw. So I'm gonna take these headphones off so I can hear, right? And yeah, it's decent enough for the rolling base. Like if you did want to move it around your shop, you could. I find it easier just to roll my tools to it, or again use like a 20-foot hose. So it typically stays right where it is. But the reason why I wanted it up on the wall is one to alleviate it from it taking up floor space. You can mount the whole entire assembly up on the wall. And then the bag filters, they work. It just again as it takes in air, it throws all the dust back into the air. So having a proper canister filter is a decent upgrade to make to any dust collector. And then having a separator just eliminates you from having to empty it as much. And if your separator goes into like a 55-gallon drum, it's less dumping than having to dump that bag. And it's easier than having to change out the bag and deal with the band clamps. All right, so we now have another behemoth of a cutting board. This one will get trimmed up and again probably cut to about this height, coming all the way across. We'll square it up, flatten this with the router sled. We're at about 1 hour and 40 minutes. We'll see if we get that far. I might try to hit a second stream today. I do have somewhere else I need to run probably in like another 45, 50 minutes. So then, if I can charge my phone back up, I might hit a second stream today where we actually get to the router sledding process. If we don't get to it this time. But yeah, so boom, boom. Let me move all these clamps off the bench. And now what I need to do is go ahead and rip those new strips. Yes, that is the plan. I would like to be adding the knife holder and stuff to this one. But again, with how my mom is, this board's going to get a little heavy. So she might say, well, she doesn't want this. These other ones over here are also going to be pretty big. Well, bigger than like my quick throw together ones I typically make. So she might not want it. I don't know. And now what we want to do is set up my table saw to rip those strips to the same width or even just a little bit wider. And those are oh yeah, it's gonna have handles and everything else on it. She just wants something lightweight, but I'm like, nicer cutting boards are typically thicker. One, because you can always refinish. Like this board's gonna be 2 inches, but if she gets gouges and stuff in it, I can sand that down, forever. What saw? You talking about the table saw? This is the Delta, the one you can get from Lowe's, Delta 36 T2 or something like that, or T36 725 or something. This is what you can get at Lowe's for like $6.99. It's the same as the rigid model. But what I did was I took the metal base that comes with it off. And again, I'm extremely tall. If you guys can't tell from my videos, that original table saw caps, well, kind of as low as it gets is about 37 and a half inches. So I made my outfit table the same height, which made other projects more uncomfortable. So I dropped this down to 34 inches, but to drop the table saw down to that same height, I had to build a custom cabinet and stuff like that. But now the table saw is just sitting in that cabinet I built. And then, yeah, I added, wings and stuff to it. Those are just plywood and walnut wings with a router table insert. Doing the best I can with the affordable saw until I can buy me a fancy saw stop. Or somebody loves me enough to buy me a saw stop. Whichever one comes first. I'll take the love option if it's available. Or if saw stop is listening, Hey guys. That's how we're size 5 horsepower. That first time I get sponsored, I'm not gonna know what to do. I'm probably gonna be giddy. The first free tool is gonna be something as simple as like a drill bit set. All right, let's rip all these strips. I probably need to dump this bucket as well. All right, those are scraps. These two pieces can be used for something eventually. So we're going to put those off to the side. Now I'm back at the miter saw. Oh yeah, definitely a optimized setup. If you haven't seen the rest of my shop, I tried to make everything as cool or as functional as possible. So building a table saw onto a cart, outfeed table with drawers and everything else underneath, but also storage so you can throw stuff directly off the top to clear it off. I have two other Polk style benches up front that are also on wheels. They also have adjustable heights. That bench right there is a bench with pegboard and storage and an additional shelf, but I have about 14 inches where it comes out of the wall where I can actually use the bench top space. It has bench dog holes along the face of it so I can clamp doors and stuff. And then along the sides, it is a material cart. Various materials actually stow inside of the cart. On the back side, I have cubbies for full sheets of plywood. You know, I try to optimize everything inside of my shop as much as possible. It's kind of been, again, passion project. I don't have a giant YouTube shop, you know, but I think what I've done in here has been extremely creative. You know, even the miter saw, the wings themselves actually expand outward, so I increase my cut capacity. This all folds down to a really small, compact, you know, situation. If you haven't seen, either check out some of the lives or my videos. Those are drawer bonnets. They're pull-out drawers for upper cabinets. But I did all that with wooden drawer slides that I made out of half-inch plywood, and the whole entire cabinet build is made of scraps. Scrap mahogany, scrap quarter-inch plywood, and the carcasses, if you can see, all half-inch OSB. So yeah, if you are new to the channel, I definitely recommend checking out some of my other content. I definitely try to, again, be creative, be resourceful, and be budget-minded. Because, again, it's not like I can go buy like 20 sheets of balsa birch or a bunch of, you know, really premium hardwood to go build a project for you guys. But I try to make, you know, what I can do on a budget. Again, I'm not even going to say, like, people have smaller shops than me. But, again, if you guys also know my origins, I started off my channel out of the back of my box truck. So, been blessed with the space I have here. Definitely will love a little bit more space, but I try to be as creative and as functional with the space that I currently have, and also try to be inspirational. I want you guys to also go home, go to your shops, whether they're small, large, and try to make something. You know, try to be creative with your stuff. It's kind of what got me started. Never know, you can be the next big YouTuber. I'm not quite there yet, but you guys could be. So next step is for me to cut a bunch of pieces to length so I can glue in there. And I want to cut them. Let's see, these are 39 inches. So I'm probably just going to do like 13 or a little less than 13. Yeah, these are about 39. I can get 13 out of all my walnut strips. I was going to go 13 inches. So, man, I don't have a pencil on me. There's one all the way on that wall, all the way over there, and there's one on my doors. I should have grabbed that one. Would have been closer. There goes a pencil. Also, if you guys have a shop, highly recommend stashing pencils everywhere. You may think you have 2, maybe 3 stash places. Think that's enough. It's not. I need to build me a pencil holder for the miter saw. I'm going to build me one on the side of this cabinet for the table saw, so there's always like 5 or 10 pencils at every location possible. And hopefully by then I no longer lose or have to look for a pencil or a tape measure. Might still happen though. I'm pretty sure it's a curse that all us woodworkers deal with, and there's no way around it. But you know, who knows? Maybe there's that woodworker out there that never loses anything. Maybe his name is Jesus. And I bring my stop block in closer. A scrap piece of wood and butt up against my stop block, or I just use the built-in clamp on the miter saw. gonna swing that around here. Grab me a random block. Yes. Okay. Grab this random block, and then what I'm going to do is clamp that block to the miter saw to create a stop block for smaller pieces. So anything within the range of, outside of the range of my stop block, you can either use like a story pole, cut it to 20 inches and go that route, or again, just clamp something right there to your miter saw. And that's a job site solution too. For those of you carpenters who are on the job site, you're doing maybe like sculpture molding for our stairs, all the return pieces. You could sit there and measure every single piece to 12.5 inches or whatever your return is, or you can clamp something to your miter saw and batch out all 15 pieces for your steps versus, tape measure. So if you don't have a stop block or tape T-track or anything else in your job site miter saw is set up, if you have your miter saw clamp, I think that's one of the only things I actually use this clamp for. I don't really use it to hold material down, but stop blocks. Also, my Festool MIDI no longer is working, so I'm just using the dust bag on the machine. All right, let me bring all these closer so I can just batch cut all these. I will say the Makita miter saw is probably my favorite. I haven't really used the Festool miter saw so much. I grew up on the DeWalt miter saw. I do have a Ryobi 10-inch inside of my box truck. I think my first miter saw was like a Chicago Electric. So I've kind of used all the levels of miter saws. I'll say for the shop, the Makita forward rail system is amazing. The DeWalt saw, I would say, is the most intuitive and the most rugged out of all the miter saws you can go and grab. The Festool has the forward rail design and the easier angle adjustment for the bevels. So that's where it takes this saw. And it has better dust collection. That's This one would have better dust collection, but it has this really small dust port. It has the 2 ports for the big boot, but it has a small holes right there. So Festo does outtake it in dust collection. The one that I want to try is the Flex miter saw. I use the Flex battery platform in general. Again, I know they've fallen off because they lost their place at Lowe's, but I think the Flex miter saw is probably going to be the best one once I get my hands on it. And I've heard rumors that they're working on a Ford rail design, so I might actually wait until they drop that one. But the Makita miter saw, like, as far as while spending the Festo money, I think this is the best one you can get. Okay, we're back. Yeah, so other than those plastic parts, which do worry me a little bit, but I've had the battery powered Makita before this one, and haven't had any issues with them. Nothing broke on them, nothing failed on them. It cuts accurately, plenty of power. It's heavy as fuck though. So like, if you're gonna use it on a job site, I wouldn't recommend it. I think the best job site saw will be the Flex one. Unless you want to, the Ryobi is great because it's lightweight. The Ryobi 10-inch battery power saw has been my trim saw for at least 8 years, and I still have the exact same one. So I will say, get the saw that works for you. Honestly, most of them, once you calibrate them, there's not really too much issue in them. You can find defects as you get stuff from the manufacturer. So I have heard reviews. This itself was out of square on the Makita before on some other people's saws. So I say get that, check it, get a straight edge. But you need to calibrate any tool that you buy. So, and if it's ever damaged to the point where you can't calibrate it, just send it back, get another one. I wouldn't blame manufacturing or I wouldn't use manufacturing or shipping as a gauge for. Well, it can be a gauge. It can be a gauge for the company, but not so much the tool. They still make a great tool, but just have shit manufacturing. And right now, again, I love Flex tools. Their distribution and manufacturing, though, right now, is making it hard to be a fan. So, oh, this piece has a split. I'm gonna cut this a little bit further. There we go. I'm past the split. Not that a split, on the end grain here really would matter because again, these are gonna be glued, face grained, and it's not like it's gonna be able to split, once it's glued up inside of this assembly. And these little blocks over here, I'm pretty sure I'm tossing them all. I don't think I could use them. I could try to do one of those chaos boards. We do a bunch of different blocks to like a sheet or something. So I could hang on to them. All right, now I can show you guys what this is going to look like. Take these headphones off. Don't mind these 2 strips of mahogany. They were a little bit narrow. Also, they have staples in them. I need to pull those out before I ride or sled. But they're pretty on this side. Once I flatten it, we'll cut through that crud right there. So let's give a look at what this is going to look like. We have 6 of the mahogany strips. So let's just say we did mahogany walnut. Let's see where we end up. I'm being pretty stupid. I just realized because I have 2 extra walnut, I need to start with the walnut to end up with the pattern that I'm looking for. All right. So that's what we're looking at right now. My debate is if I want to flip any of those strips over. And yes, thank you. Thank you. This is ideally my Mother's Day gift. Take a cutting board this size. She might say it's too thick and don't not want it. And this is 16 and a half inches. It's going to be about 12 inches wide. I think that's an okay size cutting board. It's not like a 14 by 30 or nothing, but I think this would be a decent enough size. So now what I do need to do is pull out these staples because I do not want to ruin my router sled or my bit from my router sled. Where's the other one? Okay, only one has staples. But my nail puller is outside. Just gonna use a regular pair of pliers. Oh, my router's outside too, though. Oh, thank God, short staples. All right. So we can actually go into this glue up. How you doing there? Hopefully you're having a great day. Hopefully projects galore abound for you. And hopefully all your glue ups are perfectly straight and well timed. All right, let's turn this over and get ready for this glue up. I think this is going to be nice once we get it through the router sled. And the skinniest piece in here is 2 3/8. So after the router sled, again, I should be able to yield at least a 2-inch cutting board if I'm lucky. Hopefully a lot thicker. Thank you, thank you. Hopefully she likes it. Hopefully she's willing to. If not, then she'll get one of these other ones. I also plan to build her a shelf for her office and some other stuff. So if she doesn't want the super thick, fancy cutting board, I'll figure something else out. All right, we're back. Word. I missed you guys. All right, what is the best way for me to do this? Do I want to lay down clamps first, or do I want to clamp it directly to the table? I guess it almost doesn't matter. Well, no, this one's fairly thick. So yeah, I'm gonna use parallel clamps. Let me clear some of this off. Might need a persuader. So I'm gonna grab like 4. Oh, there's lucky me. There's still some sitting out because I'm so responsible. As a responsible woodworker, I always put up my clamps after I glue up. Now, what I want to try to do is keep everything flush to one side so I can keep the pattern going in the same direction, or keep the patterns lined up, ideally. All right. That's probably too many folded down as it is. Can you guys see? Is that a good spot for you guys? All right. We have 30 minutes, which is plenty of time. Well, 15 to 20, really, but 30.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you for joining in.
We're currently gluing up an end grain cutting board. Well, mostly an end grain cutting board. We're adding a couple face grain inlays I already made one mistake in this glue up. I should have started from that side. So I'm taking all this time to make sure I line up the this side here. I'm going to slide all these down to the jaws on that side, because this side of the jaws are the movable side. Well, it's only a couple seconds though. It's not really like life or death or glue up changing. Just something I want to think about heavily, because on a more important glue up or a more intricate cutting board, that might matter. Or a larger one where there's, again, more strips. Thank you. I think so as well. Once she gets her juice grooves and her handles, again, the question would just be whether or not my mom wants to lift this on and off of her counter. Oh, this is the bad clamp. Get these nice and clamped up, and I'm gonna throw one more clamp on the underside because that one doesn't reach but so far. What the hell? I'll just a few more. All right. Now, only thing I got left to do is rider sled, but I can't do that until I actually clean off my bench and scrape all my glue. So, I'm thinking about ending it here. Let me give you guys some close-ups on the board. I think this one's going to come out pretty awesome. Those two, going to be just ash boards. But again, I think the size, the thickness on those are going to be what makes those nice. Again, because it's all scraps, I'm not going to be charging a lot. Most of it, again, will probably just be gifts to clients or mothers for Mother's Day. So let's get these squared away. We'll probably end up delving back into another live stream either later this evening or tomorrow. Debating. I have a job I have to do tomorrow, and I do have somewhere I need to run today. So if not tonight, then maybe tomorrow after I get off, we'll be flattening all these boards and probably delving into the nightstand, TV stand build. We'll see if we get that far, but definitely before this weekend, we'll have all these flattened, juice grooved, and ready to present. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this live stream. I greatly appreciate everybody who's hung out with me so far. And thank you. Definitely appreciate everybody who's hung out with me so far. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Smash that like button, leave me a subscribe, comment, and then I'll be seeing you guys in the next one. Peace. Click the X. Oops.